In this video, we're going to discuss what I think are the top 5 players most likely to be traded during this current NHL season. And that's coming up next. Everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, we analyze and discuss all 31 NHL teams with an unbiased opinion. So if you love hockey, consider hitting that subscribe button now so you don't miss any future content. These are my top 5 that I think will happen during the season at some point. Now, some of these are more likely to be deadline deals, and I'll discuss that as I get through each one when I think they're more likely to happen. Number 5, we're going to discuss the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, they actually have 3 players that are UFAs coming up that at the beginning of the season I would have predicted are all very likely and highly likely to be traded sometime during the season, possibly as deadline rentals. But the Vegas Golden Knights suddenly have a winning hockey club and as of today would make the NHL playoffs. That certainly changes things a little bit. But their top 3 players, now I know I said I was doing a top 5, I'm going to lump these 3 Vegas players into one because I'm not sure that any or all of them are going to be moved, but they're going to all fall into that category. Number 1 is Lucas Sbisa, defenseman, playing probably his best hockey of his career. He's unrestricted free agent coming up. Now, I think out of all the 3, he's probably the most likely to be traded just because they have so many darn defensemen. Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights took a lot of defensemen in the expansion draft, and they still have too many that can play at the NHL level, so I think he's the most likely to get moved out. So any teams that need defensive help heading into the playoffs, I think he'd be an excellent pickup. Now, at the same time, if Vegas is going to continue their winning and actually have a run out to playoffs, are they really going to trade away anything? I think the answer is yes, they will, but they're not going to trade away a lot. I think Sbisa is one of those options that they probably will move regardless, just because they have too many defensemen. Number 2 I'm going to look at is David Perron. David Perron's a fairly consistent 20 goal scorer in this NHL league, and he's having a pretty good season with the Golden Knights so far. Now, they do actually have a lot more scoring than people would have given them credit for or realize. But when you go down their lineup and look through it, David Perron might be expendable just because they have more scoring than we've ever seen normally for an expansion franchise. Goal scoring is up this year, and they don't have any trouble keeping up as they've been winning a fair bit of games. So I think David Perron would be a nice pickup for a secondary scoring for a team trying to make a deep run in the playoffs. And I think that that's likely is to happen as well. Now, the other big name in Vegas that was an unrestricted free agent, which everybody, for the most part, pegged as a deadline rental for another team, is James Neal. Personally, James Neal is scoring at an excellent pace. The Vegas Golden Knights are winning. And even though going into this season, everybody pegged Marc-Andre Fleury as the face of the franchise, the fact of the matter is that Fleury got hurt early on. Not to say that he won't be a face of the franchise going forward, but at the same time, James Neal has played quite a big role in keeping this team going strong while their goaltenders have been out injured. James Neal scoring at a high rate. He seems to be having lots of fun. I mean, he seems to be the kind of player that has lots of fun all the time anyway. He's always smiling, a big toothless grin. I personally can see Vegas keeping this guy and signing him. I think he's going to fetch probably a 5 or 6 year deal if he were to go on the open market. I believe he's going to be 30 years old this year. Hard to say what the annual value would be for a player like Neal. I mean, he's hit 30 plus goals before. Hard to say exactly where he's going to fall, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you just seen Kyle Turner sign a 6-year, $6 million deal in Nashville, I think James Neal could easily fetch that, maybe a little bit more. Now, so I wouldn't be completely shocked if Vegas locks him up for 4 or 5 years and keeps him to help that franchise going forward. Number 4, I'm going to put Mike Green to the Detroit Red Wings. Now, obviously, Mike Green's in a contract year. He's also a pending unrestricted free agent, and he's playing like it. He's finally playing much better this year. He's the type of player that if you look back at his career statistics, he typically does play much better when he needs a new contract. Mike Green, I think, has a little bit of an up and down reputation. At one point in time, he was a big goal scorer, scoring 20 plus goals. So based on the fact that Green's in a contract year, I don't think it makes sense long term for Detroit to hang on to him. I think he'd be a good help to another team making a playoff run who needs either some help on the blue line, more so with the offense and puck moving defensemen. Right shot puck moving defensemen that are coming at a premium in this league, and I think he's a prime candidate to be traded. I think it's more likely going to be a deadline rental. Hard to say where he'll sign next year, but I think he's definitely going to be a deadline deal. Number 3 on my list is going to be Rick Nash of the New York Rangers. It's pretty clear and evident that Rick Nash will not be back with the Rangers next season. That's the obvious part of this. Now, I do see him being a deadline deal. I don't think the Rangers are going to want to walk away from him for nothing. Obviously, it makes sense that they're probably not going to re-sign him. So regardless of their situation, come trade deadline, as we approach the playoffs, I see them trading Rick Nash no matter what. Now, based on the Rangers' slow start this year, a lot of us had the Rangers not making the playoffs or maybe squeaking in as a wild card. They have certainly turned things around lately. They've been winning and get themselves back into that picture where they just do stand a better chance to make the playoffs if they can keep this up. But regardless of how the season goes, Rick Nash most likely will be a deadline deal to another team looking to make a playoff run, and then obviously he'll re-sign somewhere else in the offseason. But Rick Nash, I think we can almost guarantee, will be traded sometime before the deadline. Number 2 on this list is Alex Galchenyuk of the Montreal Canadiens. This guy's kind of been an up and down player. He certainly has lots of skill, lots of talent, has had a hard time sustaining it for long periods of time. Obviously, a couple of years ago, he did score 30 goals, so he did prove it that season that he can be a good player. But the Habs always seem to be really reluctant to keep him at center ice, which was his natural position. I've heard Habs coaches say in the last couple of years, even Michel Therrien when he was there, and even Claude Julien now, as well as Marc Bergevin, say that Galchenyuk just can't play center at the NHL level. Personally, I'm not convinced of that just yet, but obviously they see him more often than I do, so I'm not really sure what exactly, maybe it's the work ethic, the responsibilities that comes with playing a center role that maybe he just can't handle. But either way, they seem to be bouncing him around through their lineup a lot, and they have been able to get production out of him at times. They've had a really hard time finding a long-term fit, though, where he can stay, be comfortable, and produce. So even though the Habs have kind of turned things around as well, I still would not be surprised to see Galchenyuk traded. Alright, number 1 on my list for the most likely player to be traded sometime during the NHL season this year is Evander Kane of the Buffalo Sabres. Now, I've selected Evander Kane as my number 1 just because I think of all the guys that are highly likely to be traded, he's the most impactful player that might be available. Now, at the same time, I'm going to say I think the Buffalo Sabres might be a little bit crazy for trading this guy. Obviously, he's proven this year that he's played very, very well with Jack Eichel. Obviously, they just signed Jack Eichel to a monster extension, which will be kicking in. And Eichel and Kane have played very well together. So obviously, they want to keep Eichel happy. They want him to have a nice top winger to play with him to help produce. Obviously, I think he's a pretty good fit in Buffalo from what I've heard. I think he seems to be, hopefully this guy will show a little bit more maturity. I know there's been lots of off-ice issues in the past, which is probably going to scare off some teams. But, Evander Kane is an impact player regardless of what he does off the ice. On the ice, that guy can score, and he's a tremendous hockey player. I think the Buffalo Sabres should hang on to him, but I think based on his contract status and the status of the team, Buffalo's still not winning. They're obviously still a struggling franchise. He's getting up there. I'm sure he's going to want a chance to win. His contract is coming due as a UFA, and I think the most likely scenario that they do trade him if they don't feel they can sign him to an extension. Personally, I think they really should consider that, and I'm sure they're weighing out all their options. But if we don't hear soon that Kane's been signed to an extension, then I'm going to go ahead and say he's more than likely to be traded, and he will be traded probably more so as a deadline deal. That would be my guess, unless another team can come in sooner and agree to him to like a sign and trade like we saw with Kyle Turris. So make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know what big names you think will be traded during this season. I'd like to know your thoughts. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button in the middle of your screen and keep watching Top Shelf Hockey.